The knock came just after midnight sharp, deliberate, to calm for that hour. I froze mid-step in the hallway, a spoonful of reheated stew trembling in my hand. The air thickened. Somewhere behind the silence, I heard a soft rustling like fabric dragging across old wood, then whispers. Not words, just the texture of breath against breath, overlapping and close. I opened the door slowly. Nothing, just night swallowing the porch. But on the mat was a brass key, ancient and ice cold, lying atop a folded note. My name was written in smudged black ink, not my handwriting. The metal stung my skin, as if rejecting me. I felt bile rise, tasting copper and something spoiled, like milk curdled in heat. The wind carried a strange scent, burnt lavender and decay. As I stepped back inside, the walls groaned. Paint bubbled in one corner, like blistered skin, and blinked. It was flat again. I should have dropped the key, but I didn't. Instead, stood in the dark living room, breathing too fast, watching the shadows curl. Something about this house had always felt ... wrong. I thought it was the isolation, but now the floor seemed to hum beneath me, a low vibration under my socks. I stepped back too late. The kitchen light flickered, then died. In the sudden dark, I saw something. A flash, like a memory that wasn't mine. Fire, women chanting. A cage buried under floorboards, sealed with blood. They called her Lang's Ware, spirit cursed for dying during childbirth, tuned to knock eternally until someone opened the wrong door. They buried her here, but the chanting had stopped generations ago. The blood seal had faded. I told myself it was sleep deprivation, just hunger, grief from the move. I told myself many things, but the key was still in my hand, and now its door upstairs was slowly creaking open. The house had always been a bit too quiet, the silence pressing in like a wet blanket over my ears. Even during the day, the wind seemed to avoid it, and the trees outside stood still, watching. The floorboards moaned under my steps, as if guarding with a weight of possibility. Sometimes I'd hear the soft clink of glass in the kitchen when no one had touched it. But I told myself old houses moved on their own. Settling, I said. Just settling. There was a constant scent, faint but persistent, hold, rust and damp earth, like something buried too shallow. The walls sometimes felt moist, cold when I leaned against them. In one corner, the wallpaper peeled slowly, curling like scorched skin. I once pressed it, flattened it, curled back up in front of me. The ceiling above the hallway sagged, and twice I found crimson droplets on the floor beneath it. I was convinced. Myself, it was old piping. I tasted iron in the back of my throat. I started finding things, bundles of twine, wrapped in black cloth, hidden under floorboards, circles under rugs, a cupboard sealed with wax and string of teeth. My dreams became feverish. I saw a woman, her face smudged, her belly torn open, crawling across my bedroom floor, knocking, always knocking. A village once stood here, long gone. I found the name carved under a loose stone in the fireplace, Bukit Sumpa, a cursed hill, locals called it. A place we were never to build upon. But the town grew, and the old rituals faded. One morning, all was calm. Light streamed through the curtains. The smell was gone. I thought maybe I had imagined it all, until I opened the fridge and found a wet handprint smeared on the inside of the door, still dripping, still warm. A week passed, and I convinced myself the key and the handprint were some sick coincidence, till I heard the music. It began as a faint, delicate chiming, like a child's music box winding itself up somewhere deep inside the walls. At first, I thought it was my phone. But at 12:03 a.m., precisely, the lullaby returned. Twisted, sour notes dragged into each other like broken piano strings. It echoed faintly down the hall, even though no room should have had the space to hold such. The sound. The hallway air thickened when it played. It smelled like something rotted behind plaster sweet, swollen decay with a metallic edge, copper and mildew. My mouth filled with saliva and a taste of rust, like I'd bitten my own tongue. The sound never came from the same place twice. Sometimes behind the bathroom wall, sometimes from beneath the floor plates. I tore a rug one night, convinced I'd find a speaker over to discover a burning like something dark and crusted at the edges, like the floor itself had once caught fire and no one had noticed. I whispered into the walls. I begged the music to stop. It would pause for a breath, for a heartbeat, and resume louder, closer, dragging more notes out of tune. The house liked when I spoke to it. Key answered. I began sleeping in short, erratic bursts. Key. My reflection started blinking out of sync. I saw movement in mirrors, always at the corners. In a dream more, maybe Natai saw a figure bound to a crib, made of ash, limbs stretched unnaturally long. Her lullaby was a curse, a warning, a summoning. The townspeople had once left dolls of twine and ash to absorb her song, to trap her voice, but they had stopped decades ago. Tonight, the music played louder. And this time, there was a second sound underneath it, knuckles rapping wood, and inside the walls, directly behind my headboard. Curiosity curdled into obsession. I stopped going to work. I let dishes rot in the sink. My reflection in the bathroom mirror had bags under its eyes, but I didn't remember being tired. Some mornings, I'd wake up with dirt under my nails and scratches on my forearms. I started digging into the house's history and into the floorboards. I was certain there was something beneath all of this, some truth buried. Online records were blank. The address wasn't registered on most maps, but I found a forgotten archive in an old church downtown where a priest muttered prayers while I read. An article, yellowed and cracked, described a woman named Abigail Merrill last seen alive in this very house in 1971. The photo showed a smiling woman, heavily pregnant. A caption read, "Vanished after opening her front door to an unknown visitor. No suspects, no body, just that one knock." In her time, the house was known as the midwife's place. Locals whispered about a child born without breath and a mother who refused to bury it. She begged the hill spirits to return its soul, but when they answered, they took hers instead. The villagers called her the Langswear, a spirit made from stillborn, mourning, and blood-soaked chants. They built the house atop the grave, sealed it with burnt offerings and sacred iron. But faith faded, rituals broke, and the ground beneath shifted. Pulling out, the music stopped, the silence was thick, and finally, I exhaled. Relief washed over me like cool water. I dared to hope. Then my bedroom walls, breath swelling outward like lungs inhaling. Faint black veins crawled beneath the paint, twitching with each heartbeat. The lights flickered. A low, wet whisper slipped through the vent. She never left. And on the kitchen table was a birth certificate, issued yesterday with my name and mother, Abigail Moreau. That night, I waited in the hallway. I didn't blink. I didn't breathe. At exactly 12:03 a.m., the music began again, but slower this time. It's like something struggling to remember how the notes fit together. The lullaby scraped across the walls, like nails on glass. I called out, trembling, "Abigail." The house responded. The air snapped cold, sharp enough to sting my lungs. A foul wind drifted down the hall, carrying the scent of rotting milk and burnt hair. Then I heard the knock-knock from the front door. Not this time. It came from the hallway closet, directly across from me. It's a single knock. Then two. Then silence. My throat was dry, the coppery taste of panic clinging to the back of my tongue. The doorknob moved. just barely a tremor, as if something inside exhaled and pressed gently against it. The wallpaper beside the door rippled. Whispers began wet and warbling, like someone drowning and still trying to speak. "Wrong door," it said, and the closet door shuddered in its frame. I turned the knob with a shaking hand. Nothing, just coats. But the cold inside was unreal, like stepping into a morgue. As I backed away, I noticed a glint behind the hanging fabric. Pushing the coats aside, I saw scratches, long, erratic gouges on the back wall, as if something had been trying to claw its way out. I slammed the door and jammed a chair under the handle. Told myself I was imagining things. Just trauma, just stress. The closet creaked again. Earlier, I found an old charm nailed to a beam in the attic, black string bound around the chicken skull with ashes packed inside. A ward, maybe. One the locals had stopped making. I clutched it like a crucifix. For a moment, the air felt lighter. Then I blinked in. The charm was gone from my hand, and the chair blocking the closet door was now inside the closet. The key burned in my pocket, covered each hole like a ball unused. My skin blistered where it touched. Desperation gnawed at my sanity. I stopped eating, barely slept. Shadows moved on their own now. I heard Abigail humming behind every wall. Whispers trickled through vents like leaking gas. I tasted bile constantly, my mouth filled with the sour temps of sickness, copper, and rot, as if the house itself was breathing through me. I searched everywhere for the lock, the real one. One night, drawn by a sound like a crying infant swallowed in static, I stumbled into the basement. The stink of wet soil and sour iron filled my nose. High in the furnace, hidden behind a false wall, I found it a door with no handle, just a lock. My fingers shook as I raised the brass key. It clicked. Inside was a narrow stone room carved into the earth itself. It was colder than the rest of the house, the walls damp and blackened. Symbols burned into the stone glowed faintly like smoldering coals. Backwards, writing covered every inch of the floor, and in the center sat a rotted wooden chair, its restraints torn and frayed, buckled to the legs with rusted iron manacles, slipped with something dark. Beneath the chair, bones, small, child-sized, arranged in a spiral, as if something had tried to rebuild itself. Found a diary beneath the bones, sealed in cracked leather and warped with moisture. The writing inside was jagged, frantic. Atia, the entries described failed rituals, endless knots, and something wrong with the birth. She came out without a soul. One entry read, so I gave her mine. The final page was smeared with blood. "Don't open the door. Don't." I fled the room, heart hammering, only to find the basement stairs had vanished. The bricks had shifted behind me. The furnace was no longer off. It hummed, and I wasn't alone in the dark. Something breathed right next to me. It wasn't Abigail who vanished. It was Abigail who stayed. Trapped, yes, but never buried. She hadn't been the victim. She'd been the jailer. I'd opened her prison like a fool, thinking I was unraveling a mystery, but the key hadn't been left from it, had chosen me. The brass hadn't burned. A cade. The knock wasn't an invitation. A cade was a test, and I failed. I stumbled out of the basement at dawn. Or what I thought was dawn. The sky outside the windows was a shade too dark, as if the sun had forgotten how to rise. The walls upstairs had begun to pulse sluggishly, like breathing. Flesh, it peeled back in strips, revealing long nail marks beneath, scratched down to the wood. The air tasted like hot pennies and old milk, and a smell god. The smell was ripe and choking, like something dead left in plastic under heat. My lungs itched. I tried calling for help. My phone only played back a woman's laughter, soft, wet and bubbling with phlegm. Every mirror in the house now showed a different room. One with blood-dripping cribs and crumbling walls, etched with the word mother over and over again. My own face stared back at me, but blinked out of sync, mouth twitching with words I hadn't said. There was a false moment of silence. Music didn't play that night. No knocks came. I dared to breathe. For once, I thought maybe it was over. Then, the ceiling in the hallway cracked. Black ichor bled through, thick and slow, dripping like oil. A new sound joined the houses. Chorus, laughter, not adult. A child's giggle hype, chitched, hollow, hungry, and from the back of my closet came a quaint voice I'd never heard before, whispering, "You're ready now, Mom." The house erupted around me, ground like a sinking ship, every board twisting under unseen weight. The walls pulsed, soft as bruised flesh, veins of black mold crawling beneath paint that hissed when touched. Light bulbs popped one by one, plunging the rooms into a flickering, blood-tinted gloom. The air thickened, humid with decay. I gagged. The taste of bile and copper clung to the back of my throat, like a curse I couldn't swallow. Something had changed. It wasn't hiding anymore. I stumbled through the hall, disoriented. Every step, sticky something, now coated the floor, dark and viscous. The music box played again, but it was broken now, discordant, choking between notes. Spurs scratched. At the edge of hearing, ancient tongues repeating one nameless weird. My grandmother had spoken of her in hushed tones when I was a child. How she slipped through windows to claim the breath of infants. How rice gathered at the threshold could delay her knock. But no rice had been laid here. No one remembered the old bruise in the mirror above the hallway table. Abigail stared back at me, her eyes deeply twisted, her mouth wide. My reflection mimicked her now, movements lagging, twitching. I wasn't alone in my skin anymore. Then, silence. The house fell still. I backed into the living room. All was quiet. I dropped to my knees, sobbing, the scent of iron hanging thick as fog. Maybe it was done. Maybe I had passed through it. I closed my eyes. Then I heard it. A wet thud behind me. I turned. The chair, the one from the basement, now sat in the center of the room, empty, dripping, strapped with fresh strings, and stitched into the cushion was a name, mine. They found my phone 3 days later, face down in the hallway, its screen shattered, smeared with something black and crusted, pulsed faintly, still warm, though the battery had long since died. On the recording app, a file looped without end, breathing wet, rasping. A soft lullaby played backward. No trace of me, no footprints, just a blood-slick trail that led into the basement, ending at a wall that hadn't been there before. The room was silent, but not empty. Police said the furniture was nailed in place, the windows painted shut on the inside. My neighbors swore they never saw lights, never heard screams. One said she dreamed of a woman knocking from inside her own chest. She woke up with scratches beneath her ribs. The landlord relisted the house that same week. Cheap rent, quiet area, he wrote in the listing. He didn't mention the claw marks on the ceiling or the melted wallpaper in the nursery. He didn't explain why the attic hatch was now sealed with thick red string, or why the floorboards bled when stepped on. My mind is still here, trapped somewhere inside the walls, or beneath the floor. I don't know which. I drift through this house like breath through a flute, half warm and aching. I watch through the mirrors. I see the shadows of others. I cannot reach some curled in corners, some still screaming. I'm no longer sure who I was, or if I ever left the chair. There's no time, just endless, pulsing hunger. I taste rust, always. Smell fire, and hair and milk gone sour. I feel her beneath my skin. and the house waits doors unlocked. Key, glinting. Music box wound, tight ready for the next nail, ready for the next knock. And now the knock comes again midnight, always. Sharp, slow, measured, reckless, and silent. The wind doesn't hurt, but the trees lean closer. The sky above the house never clears, choked by clouds like stained cotton. Side, the wallpaper twitches, and the floorboards groan not with age, but with anticipation. It's the house itself, exhaling, welcoming. A new tenant arrived this morning. She smiled as she unlocked the gate. Her suitcase rolled over the pavement, clicking like distant footsteps. She paused at the threshold, looked down. There it was, just like before. The brass key, still slick with unseen moisture. A folded note, trembling slightly in the wind. Her name scrawled in curling ink that shimmered like oil. She picked it up, inside. T, the rod lies dormant, waiting just beneath the drywall. The crib in the attic box by itself. The furnace door swings open, revealing nothing but darkness deeper than sleep. Somewhere in the walls, a soft coo begins. The lullaby rewinds. Abigail watches from every reflection now. Her smile is wider, fuller. Her eyes no longer weep, they watch. The chair in the basement gleams with fresh polish. The manacles have been oiled, a welcome home. Outside, the woman laughs softly, says to no one, finally, peace and quiet. Scent of rust rolls out beneath the door, unnoticed. Milk curdles in the fridge, though the power is fine. The house hums to itself. They say salt can block spirits, that iron can hold them. You should never answer a midnight knock unless you know who knocks. But no one remembers the rules now. No one repeats the old prayers. The music begins again. Just a note, one dot, and from inside the closet, something whispers, "You came back."